We are talking bad fish. Oh yes, this is the new movie from writer-director Brad Douglas. It is effectively a mermaid horror thriller. It is low budget and is very much a drama as well as a kind of horror thriller. So the focus is on this small fishing town somewhere on the coast of North America, and there seems to be a few fishermen that have mysteriously gone missing, and body parts are starting to kind of wash up on shore. So the local police get the help of a kind of marine biologist who is working in the kind of the local sea life attraction centre, the local aquarium, and he and his assistant travel down to this sort of small town and try to uncover what's kind of going on. And there seems to be some question about the creature that has attacked these fishermen, and it could well be a mermaid. At the same time, our local bar seems to have this kind of barmaid which is striking up a friendship with our marine biologist, and could this really be some type of mermaid, and what would be the reason? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So I should point out this movie is one which, by the looks of it, was made back to back with a kind of a sequel. But I will say on the plus side, even though this was made by the looks of it, as I say, back to back, it does feel like very much its own film and has, I think, that feeling of a complete story, which sometimes you don't get when filmmakers do make kind of films that are a series. So I would say, I haven't seen the second one, but at least to me this felt somewhat of a complete film. Now, the one thing I would say that really stands out to me in this movie that as a strength was some very good character work. This is, as I say, very much a drama more than anything else to a degree. There is some horror scenes, but it's the strength of the movie lies within its kind of dramatic relationships between our characters. And I really liked some of the understated character work here. It's a mix between, I think, some acting choices and the way the characters are written that just gives these characters a kind of realistic approach to their professionalism, their interpersonal relationships, and their investigation into what's actually kind of going on. I just kind of liked it. It just seemed kind of quite authentic. Now the acting I'll come back onto, because I do think there are some weaker links in the acting, but I gotta say, for the most part, I thought these performances were all very, very solid and believable in their roles. And for example, we have our kind of our marine biologist, which is the kind of our main character. He's got like a female assistant that there appears to be some type of romantic relationship between them, but it's not hit over your head. You don't really know, even if there ever has been. It just feels like there's something kind of going on. At the very least, an attraction. At the most, maybe they are together. But it's just done in a way which it didn't feel like it needs to over-explain things. It's kind of, it's there, and you can kind of, you can just feel like the tension between them and things like this without it really being overly explicit in regards to telling you things. And I'm just using that as an example. I thought the interpersonal relationships between all the characters here seemed really good. And yes, it's a mermaid film, and we do get some kind of interactions with kind of the mermaid characters. And again, the character work is subtle. It gives you some insights to the motivations and things like this of what drives certain characters without really kind of being too heavy on exposition and things like that. So I kind of quite liked it. And as I say, I think the acting for the majority of the cast is strong. The actual kind of horror elements are sparse in this movie. But because the movie's so concerned really with more of character work and the kind of the investigation side of stuff, when we do get the elements that are the more horrific elements, they kind of I guess, hit a little harder. I mean, they're not particularly graphic, but they just, when they do hit, it feels like it's so different from the rest of the movie. It becomes more impactful because of it. Now, this is clearly a low budget, but nonetheless, I do think those sequences, because they're so jarring compared to the rest of the film, I think again, I think it was some good direction there. Now, the creature effects, don't see much of it. Some interesting kind of choices. I don't know if I fully believe necessarily that it's fish-like. It seems more lizard-like, but I think at least the attempt here to have a kind of a different sort of take on a mermaid or a siren, I think is quite different. I'd be, if there is obviously this sequel, I'd be intrigued to see a little more of that. And even though, as I say, the effect may be a little different from intended, I was still intrigued by it. And I think the effects for the low budget, I think, are used smartly. They don't kind of dwell on shots too much. We really don't see huge amounts of it, and I think that's possibly down to the kind of the budgetary reasons. And the general kind of plot of this movie about both the townspeople and what these mermaids may or may not want is an intriguing one. It's an interesting plot, and again, the way these characters are very much kind of like just everyman type characters. You do buy into them. You're kind of there for the ride, and again, like the interactions with that. For example, the guy who's the police chief, he's suspicious of certain people, but he hasn't got the evidence, so doesn't push too hard. I just thought it was a very kind of like good example of decent sort of character work and writing here to make a what is a very low budget movie very compelling. So let's talk about what doesn't work. There are a few performances which I unfortunately do stand out as on the weaker side. For the most part, I thought the performances were actually fairly good, but there's one or two that do stick out as maybe being a little less experienced or unsure in front of the camera. For those of you who want more of an overt horror film, it is very light on actual kind of VFX, creatures, and despite the fact that we are dealing with, you know, a kind of supernatural creature, a cryptid, or whatever you want to call it, there isn't much in regards to that. And, you know, it's one of these films that I always think with sci-fi films, when you have an alien film, but you're having a huge budget, the aliens always just look like regular humans, and thinking it's just a cheap way to kind of like get over the fact that you don't have to spend money on effects and stuff by making the aliens or whatever look human. And it's kind of the same thing here. Yes, there's mermaids in it, but for the most part, we just see them as kind of human beings, which is a bit of a cop out, really, especially if you are going into this movie expecting to see a film about mermaids in their traditional kind of form. You'll be a bit disappointed here because I think it could have had a little more with it. And as I say, I think I kind of like the practical effects, but it really doesn't look like a mermaid. It kind of looks like a lizard person, if anything else. Again, you don't see much, so I kind of reserve a little judgment on that to see if the sequel will kind of give us a better idea about what we're actually looking at here. But you don't see much, and it kind of looks maybe not what you're going to think in this one. I feel also the movie may be just a little bit slow and a little bit on the kind of the lesser side in regards to the paranormal stuff that you might expect. So you might just find it just seems like a kind of drama film for the most part, with a kind of sprinkling here of the sort of supernatural. There is some decent cinematography here and there, but for the most part, it's just a lot of kind of conversations and things like that within this kind of town or on the coast. So it depends what you want from this movie, really. If you want more of an overt horror, an overt visually stimulating movie, that's not so much with this one. But I do think this movie's strength is really the character work. And, you know, I'm often kind of criticised for not giving 10 out of 10s on this channel. And Jaws is a 10 out of 10 movie. But Jaws is a 10 out of 10 movie for some stellar character work. Now, I'm not saying this is up there with Jaws, but that's what makes a movie a lot of the time. And I do feel that the camera, the character work here is very impressive. I mean, yeah, it's not the most thrilling movie. It's not the most visually interesting movie. But I've got to say, I think it's an above average one. So I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.